So we thought it was important enough to have a full chapter on the proper care and feeding of your pipeline.
That's right. So important, because what we found with too many of our friends, too many of our clients before they started working with us, is that they would have peaks and valleys in their pipeline.
Feast and famine.
Feast and famine, that's exactly right. Where the top part of the funnel is completely empty, and then they have lots of proposals that are waiting to close, or they have lots of sales that are waiting to close, and they say, oh, I have to spend my time on these sales that are waiting to close, so I don't have time to keep feeding the top of the funnel and make sure the prospects are coming into the sales
You
cycle.
want me to do prospecting calls and go to a networking event when I have these 2 proposals that have to, or these 2 phone calls that have to be made to close this deal right now, you know? And so they get hung up where they do either the parts of the funnel they like or the parts that are urgent, and they don't feed the other parts of the funnel.
And then what happens is you have the sales that move forward and they close, and then all of a sudden people take a look at the first part of their funnel and they say, oh, I don't have enough in the funnel.
Right.
I'm not going to have enough closed sales in a couple of months.
Yeah, so we use the analogy in the book of the watermelon and the garden hose. So had you read Sales Cycleonomics, that chapter 3, you would have found that, let's say your sales cycle was 90 days, okay? So if you do lead generation and prospect building and prospecting in January, for example, add 90 days, and that means a sale should come out the other end. So we feed the watermelon in January, and so we've got January, February, March, end of March, maybe beginning of April, the watermelon pops out and that's a sale. So we have to make sure we're putting enough watermelons in and on a consistent basis, right? Because every part of the funnel is important. But what a lot of our clients are doing, and we see a lot of our friends doing, is they will feed a whole bunch of watermelons in and then say, wow, I've got all these proposals I got to take care of. Right. Holy cow, we have some sales. Then you'll make the biggest mistake. While you're fulfilling the order, handling the product and service fulfillment side of the business, you're not marketing. Right? And so you go into this feast and famine cycle where I'm so busy I can't market and I can't sell. Oh, I'm slow. Gosh, we have to get out there. Let's go sell. And so you're confusing your database. You're being inconsistent with them, right? And not only are there not enough watermelons going through the garden hose, but they're not going through consistently enough.
Right. And depending on how you're judging your salespeople, some people are closing a quarter and they want a certain number of sales. And what happens then? If they don't have enough in that garden hose, what happens is people start dropping their prices, asking for favors from their prospects and their clients in order to sink as many sales in, but they're not necessarily the right sales. They're not necessarily the right margin sales because there wasn't enough in the garden hose in the beginning.
And there's always another quarter, and you're going to have to go, now that you've done that out of desperation to hit your numbers, you've made all of these wild promises, you have to go back to those same people again and now ask for retail rates. It just doesn't make sense.
Right, and they're not going to do it. Or you have to ask for more favors, but they already gave you a favor. You could eliminate all of that by keeping enough coming in the beginning part of the garden hose and keeping all those watermelons moving through consistently without shifting your focus from place to place. Every part of that garden hose needs focus.
Yeah, and like we talked about in Sales Cycleonomics, we need to define the sales cycle, each of the steps in it, and then once we know how many watermelons need to go in and how much time elapses between, the marketing activities to the conversation, we do actually give you the steps of how to define your sales process. Then what you would have to do is then define how much time for each step.
Right.
That defines your sales cycle, and then we have to make sure that a certain number of watermelons, or how many watermelons do we have to put in the front end of the funnel so one pops out at the end as a sale. And that, we can't stress it enough how consistent that has to be, because if it's inconsistent, let's say we have a bad January month, going back to that analogy, and there's 90 days. If you don't do the proper lead generation or prospecting activities in January, you can plan April is going to be a rough month.
Right. That's a really important piece. And what a lot of people complain to us, that we don't have the resources everybody has to be all hands on deck to answer these proposals. They take time. Everybody has to be all hands on deck to go to the meetings to get the proposals closed. Well, if that is happening for you, guess what? You may need to add more resources to the beginning part of the funnel to make sure that that funnel stays full so that you're not experiencing those peaks and valleys that could kill your sales this year.
Yeah. And what's interesting, what we've found over the years is that almost every one of our clients will say to us, oh, my business has some seasonality, or that's the busy season for us. And it's interesting, it actually coincides with the amount of marketing you're doing at the same time. And we have found that if you properly prepare your pipeline and you're consistently doing marketing all year round, you can soften some of that seasonality, meaning your peaks are just as high, but the valleys aren't as low, right? And you can be a little bit more consistent throughout the course of the year.
Right, and your sales will be more predictable. And what was the word you used in the book? That the sales are not only predictable, they're inevitable.
Right, exactly. There comes a point when you do enough prospecting, lead generation, door opening, that you say, listen, if I hit this certain number, it's inevitable I'll get a client. And everybody knows that inevitability line, and you do too. If I gave you 10 leads, you say, yeah, I'd probably close one. But if I gave you 20, would you close one? Oh my God, if you gave me 20,
right,
I would definitely close no matter what, right? That's an inevitability. So that's part of the proper care and feeding of your pipeline is know what the inevitable line to cross is, and make sure you're crossing it on a regular enough basis.
Right.
Yeah.
Another point that we make in the book, where the care and feeding of the pipeline is what are the kinds of activities that will move a prospect from one part of the pipeline to another. There's a whole difference between sending an email that says touching base or checking in versus I read an article that I thought was really important for the work that you're doing, and let's put a time on the calendar to discuss how it applies to you and how the proposal I gave you a month ago will actually help you achieve your goals. How's Thursday at 10 for you?
Right. I just read this white paper. It's talking about the trends. You're in the middle of it. You haven't mentioned it to me yet. Maybe this is something we should get on the calendar right away.
Right. So there's a difference between the kind of lead nurturing that actually nurtures leads versus the kind of lead nurturing where you could just check the box and say, yes, I did that.
Oh yeah, I emailed them, but there was no substance. And going back to your messaging sucks, you sent them another marketing email as opposed to a customized sales message.
And that's a really good point, because after somebody goes on a meeting and maybe follows up once or twice, I find that there's a huge gap in the knowledge for people to know what to do to take that relationship to the next level. And so they will often put their leads in a drip campaign, but too soon. And remember, a drip campaign is a marketing initiative. Right now, they're in your sales funnel. If you take them out of your sales funnel and put them back in your marketing funnel, how likely is it that they're going to move to the end of that sales funnel? Probably not.
Friends don't spam. I don't get spam messages from you or generic messages. You call, we talk, because we're in that relationship, right? As opposed to the generic marketing.
Right, the generic versus the relationship, a really big deal. Yeah. I was giving a seminar a while back, and in preparation, I interviewed some of the key people in the industry that everybody in the audience wanted to get in to see. And I said to them, what is it that you want from these people who want to get in the door to you? Yeah. And they said, please tell them that when we receive email messages that were meant for 1,000 people, we know it and we don't like it. Right. If they want to get in the door with us, they have to say something that's meaningful to me as a person. And that is very different than a drip campaign.
Yeah, absolutely. So the proper care and feeding of your pipeline, let's put some more predictability and consistency and inevitability into the sales. That's why we wrote this chapter, because this is an area that we have come across so many people who are struggling with and not sure how to figure that part out.